If the professional hysterics on cable news, Don Lemon and the rest, have seemed a little more florid and jumpy than usual recently, there's a reason for that. They have finally uncovered the president's crimes. No, not Russia collusion. Despite years of searching, there is still no evidence that that happened. The horrifying new misdeed they've uncovered has, in fact, nothing to do with Vladimir Putin. Instead, it's about sex. Here's how the New York Times describes it. Quote, President Trump directed illegal payments to ward off a potential sex scandal that threatened his chances of winning the White House. In other words, Trump paid off former girlfriends. So let's assume that happened. We don't know for certain that it did. We need videotape really to prove it. But for the sake of debate, let's say that it did happen. Why would sending money to women be considered a crime? Well, because federal prosecutors and their lackeys on television are telling us Trump was running for president at the time. Therefore, these payments constitute a campaign finance violation, even though the money apparently didn't come from his campaign. That's the argument they're making. There's no precedent for that argument, to put it mildly. Bill Clinton tried to keep his affair with Monica Lewinsky secret by giving her a government salary. Nobody suggested that was a campaign finance violation. Even when presidents have admittedly violated campaign finance laws, impeachment and felony charges never entered the conversation. Barack Obama, for example, in 2008 ran for president. His campaign was found guilty of campaign violations involving nearly $2 million. That's almost 10 times the payments Trump made. No one was prosecuted for that. The Obama campaign got off with a $375,000 fine to the FEC. In 1998, Chuck Schumer was caught taking $1 million in, quote, excessive contributions. He also failed to properly disclose $6.4 million in expenses. The consequences of all this? Schumer paid a $138,000 fine. As you saw earlier today, Schumer is still in the Senate. Senator John Edwards, meanwhile, funneled up to $1 million in donor money to his mistress in the middle of a presidential campaign. He never spent a day in jail for that. He was sleazy. He wasn't a criminal. Now, for some reason, you haven't heard any of that background on NBC recently. The good people of NBC News are disgusted by what Donald Trump did. Paying off female accusers? That's just wrong. As Nancy Pelosi might say, it's immoral. It's not something NBC would engage in or tolerate or countenance ever, except possibly under extreme circumstances, on those occasions when hiding the sexual misbehavior of its high-paid anchors seemed important to quarterly earnings, maybe, or when accused rapist Harvey Weinstein called in a favor, or other times, too. But those were entirely different circumstances because Donald Trump was not involved. And Trump is a very bad man, even though Trump once actually worked at NBC and made tens of millions of dollars for the company. But again, that was different. It's all very different from what's happening with Donald Trump. Mark Penn has been in Washington a very long time, long enough to have perspective. He worked for Bill Clinton, among many others. He joins us tonight. So what I was struck by in all of this was how very close this seems to what the Congress has been doing for an awful long time, paying off accusers.
Well, ironically, in this return back to 1998 again, a little thing happened here that there are 268 settlements in Congress, many of them presumably done during the election period, that if this was a true precedent, we'd have to lock up scores of congressmen. Lock them up now. Where are the felony convictions?
So when you say settlements, what do you mean? Paid to accusers, mostly women, I would assume. Whose money was that?
Well, that actually was taxpayer money that they used for those settlements. But those settlements, if you follow the logic of this, would be campaign contributions, which was why the logic of this is broken. That these are personal expenses that relate to people and what they did or didn't do. In the congressional case, a lot of wrongdoing here. Here in the Trump case, there's no allegations of wrongdoing in these consensual affairs, nor would they have changed the fate of the election. In fact, the contribution, the money paid to Stormy Daniels would never have been reported before the election was held in any event.
Wait, so you're saying that people on Capitol Hill who took taxpayer money to pay off sex accusers in election years are now saying the president is a felon for doing the same thing with his own money?
Well, I think they're going to have a problem if they push impeachment and there was a settlement in their office that could have affected one of their elections, because they're going to be asked the question, did you or someone in your office cause a settlement to be entered into sometime in the year of your election, and are you a felon now if Donald Trump is a felon?
Why isn't, I mean, the very story is amazing to me, and I don't know any of the details. I don't know anyone does. But why are news organizations relentlessly trying to figure out whether more than 200 settlements took place, and were they valid, and why were taxpayer dollars used for this?
Well, you saw there was a little bit of discussion of it, but I suppose since it's probably both sides, Congress decided to pretty much bury this issue because it probably would affect both parties. But it's going to come up unless what happens here with Trump really goes through the right course, which is that with personal behavior and not a campaign violation.
I mean, you've been here for so long in Washington. Does hypocrisy get so profound that it destroys the people who engage? I mean, can you say something that's so hypocritical that God just strikes you down in the middle of a TV appearance? Can that happen?
You see it every day. That's why the position I've taken that I didn't like '98 and I don't like what's going on today for the very same reason that you can't remove presidents for these reasons. You can't find crimes on them to get them out. Let the people have their elections. Let democracy have its will. The American people have a way. If they do it right, they do it again. If they made a mistake, they take it back.
So you've always been a Democrat. You've probably been labeled an apostate just for appearing on this show and other reasons. But I'm wondering, there've got to be, but you must talk to Democrats still. Of course you do. And there have to be some in town who think, well, you know, we could have a lot of power pretty soon, and these standards that we have set may be applied to us, and maybe that's not a good thing. Is anyone thinking that through?
Most people are thinking, get Trump. I mean, it's pretty clear that these prosecutors who got Cohen on tax evasion and then had him plead on this and then put it in the sentencing memo fingering the president, none of which they should have done, clearly were out to get the president. Democrats are happy with that. Republicans were happy with getting Clinton. I'd just like people to do elections. Hypocrisy reigns 100% on this issue.
Last question. Since you lived through a special counsel investigation when you worked for the Clintons, how dumb would you have to be to allow another special counsel investigation to unfold? Will any president ever in American history allow a special counsel investigation?
Well, the Clintons were always very upset that they agreed to that special counsel in the first place because of what happened. Trump never agreed to it and got in the system. The irony here is Congress let the statute lapse so there would never be another independent counsel, and then Rosenstein created this creature that really didn't have even judicial supervision to go ahead and have free reign to go after the president.
So a totally extra-constitutional office, really not overseen by any elected official at all, which is unconstitutional by definition, was allowed because one guy at DOJ wanted it?
Well, not only that, but because of the power that Mueller has, you would think that he would be the kind of official that should be approved by the Senate. And so that's why there's been a question to the legitimacy, because he appears to have vast and unlimited power, greater than the U.S. attorneys, who are approved by the Senate.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him in my house, that's for sure. Mark Penn, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Great to see you.